The chandeliers in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel glittered like 1,000 accusations as I stood frozen among the crowd of New York's elite. Presley Harrington, the woman who had once broken my heart and walked away without looking back, stood on the raised platform beside Ethan Caldwell, the son of her father's business partner. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, praising the union that would supposedly save Harrington Enterprises from financial ruin. "Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses to the future Mrs. Caldwell." But Presley didn't raise her glass. Instead, she stepped forward, her elegant black gown shimmering under the lights. With a steady hand, she slid the enormous diamond engagement ring off her finger and let it drop to the polished floor with a sharp, echoing clink. The room fell into a stunned silence. "I can't do this," she said, her voice clear and unwavering despite the way her hands trembled slightly at her sides. "I can't marry Ethan. The only person I want to marry is Reagan Thompson." The gasps were immediate, a wave of shock rolling through the crowd like a tidal wave. Cameras from the press section flashed wildly. I felt my heart stop in my chest. Me? After all these years? After she had denied us so completely back in college, choosing her family's approval over the love we shared? Her father, Mr. Harrington, turned beet red, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Ethan's mother looked as if she might faint. And me, Reagan Thompson, the woman who had spent the last 10 years building a life without her, trying to forget the way her touch had once made the world disappear. I could only stare, my mind reeling with 1,000 unanswered questions and the sudden, overwhelming rush of old pain mixed with something dangerously like hope. People started whispering the words lesbian and scandal floating through the air like poisonous darts. Security moved in, but Presley ignored them, stepping off the stage and walking straight toward me through the parting crowd. Her eyes never left mine. "Reagan," she whispered when she reached me, close enough that I could smell the familiar scent of her perfume, the one she had worn since college. "Please, just listen." Before I could answer, her father's voice cut through the chaos. "Presley and Harrington, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" The room erupted again, phones recording every second. I grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the side exit, my pulse hammering. We burst into the cool night air of Central Park South, the city lights blurring through the tears I refused to let fall. "You can't just drop a bomb like that and expect me to catch it," I said, voice shaking. "Not after everything." She turned to face me, the street lamp casting harsh shadows across her face. "I know. But the bomb has been ticking for 12 years, Reagan. And tonight I finally stopped lying." In that moment, the present cracked open and the past flooded back with brutal clarity. It had started innocently enough back in our sophomore year at Columbia. I was the quiet pre-law student from a middle-class family in New Jersey, scraping by on scholarships and part-time jobs at the campus library. Presley was the golden girl, heir to the Harrington fortune, with perfectly styled blonde hair, and the kind of effortless confidence that came from never having to worry about money. We met in a literature class, paired for a project on feminist theory. At first it was just debates over coffee in the campus cafe, arguing about Simone de Beauvoir and the nature of freedom. But soon those debates turned into late-night walks through Central Park, sharing secrets under the stars. I remembered the first time she kissed me. It was after a particularly intense study session in her dorm room, the kind where the air felt thick with unspoken tension. "Reagan," she had whispered, her fingers brushing my cheek, "I think I'm falling for you." And I, terrified but exhilarated, had kissed her back, the world narrowing to just the two of us. For 6 months we were inseparable in secret, stolen moments in empty classrooms, weekends pretending to be study buddies, at her family's cabin upstate. She made me feel alive in a way no one else ever had. But even then I could sense the shadows. Her family was old money, conservative to the core, and the pressure to maintain the perfect image weighed on her like an anchor. Still, in those early days, love felt stronger than fear. Until the day it wasn't. The cab ride to my apartment in Brooklyn was silent except for the hum of the engine and the distant wail of sirens. Presley sat beside me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the same hands that had once traced every line of my face like she was memorizing a map home. I kept my eyes on the passing lights, trying to steady the storm inside me. 10 years of carefully constructed walls were crumbling in a single night. And I didn't know whether to scream or cry. When we finally stepped into my modest living room, the contrast hit hard. My second-hand furniture against the ghost of her penthouse life. "Talk," I said, crossing my arms. "Because right now all I hear is the echo of the last time you walked away." Presley sank onto the couch, running a hand through her hair. "It started falling apart senior year. My father found out about us. He didn't scream, he never does. He just sat me down in his study and laid out the future. Harrington Enterprises was already cracking under bad investments. He said if I didn't end it, he'd cut me off completely. No trust fund, no connections, no future. And worse, he threatened to expose you. To ruin your law school applications with whispers about inappropriate influences." Her voice cracked. "I was 21, Reagan. Terrified. I convinced myself I was protecting you by letting you go. I told you I needed to focus on the family business, that what we had was just a phase. I watched you walk out of that cafe with tears in your eyes, and I hated myself every single day after." The memory slammed into me like a freight train. That rainy afternoon in the West Village cafe, her words slicing through me. "This isn't who I am, Reagan. I can't be that person," I had begged, then walked away into the downpour, feeling like my entire world had been erased. After that I threw myself into law school, graduated top of my class, built a career at a top firm specializing in corporate ethics, ironic considering the secrets I carried. I dated men a few times, trying to prove to myself I could move on, but every touch felt wrong. Presley's ghost was always there. Now here she was, sitting in my living room, tearing open wounds I thought had scarred over. "But why now?" I asked, voice raw. "Why agree to marry Ethan at all if you were going to blow it up?" She looked up, eyes glistening. "The company was sinking faster than anyone knew. My father's heart attack last year left everything on me. Ethan's family offered the merger on one condition, the marriage. I thought I could play the part, save thousands of jobs, keep my mother from losing the house. I told myself it was just paper. Then I saw you in the crowd tonight. You were there because your firm represents one of our creditors. And suddenly every lie I'd told myself for a decade collapsed. I couldn't stand there and pretend anymore. Not when the only real thing I've ever had was you." Before I could respond, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls from my mother, texts from colleagues, headlines already trending. Harrington heiress comes out in shocking gala meltdown. The world was watching. Presley reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "You don't get to decide when we pick this back up," I said. "You left scars, Presley. Deep ones." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "I know. And I'll spend every day trying to heal them if you'll let me." The night stretched on with painful honesty. Fragments of our shared past resurfacing like evidence in a trial I never wanted to relive. By dawn, exhaustion won, but the real storm was only beginning. Morning light filtered through my blinds as the first confrontation hit. My mother called at 6 a.m., her voice tight with disbelief. "Reagan Elizabeth Thompson, tell me this is some tabloid prank. You and Presley Harrington? After everything we taught you about family values." I gripped the phone, staring at Presley still asleep on my couch, her face peaceful for the first time in years. "Mom, it's complicated." She didn't want complicated. She wanted the daughter who had dated the nice boys from church youth group, the one who had buried her truth to keep the peace. The call ended in tears on both sides. Another layer of guilt stacking on the mountain Presley and I had already built. Presley woke to the sound of my pacing. "Your family?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Yours too, I imagine." Her phone buzzed nonstop, her father demanding she come home immediately, board members threatening to pull support, even old college friends texting in shock. The social media firestorm was brutal. Harrington scandal trending with memes, hateful comments calling her a liar and a disgrace. Conservative outlets ran headlines about the fall of American family values, while progressive ones hailed her as a hero. Neither felt right. We spent the day in my apartment, curtains drawn, piecing together the timeline that had led us here. I showed her the letter I had written but never sent after the breakup, pages of anger and love I had sealed away like evidence. She read it in silence, then pulled me into an embrace that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. "I'm so sorry," she whispered against my hair. "I was wrong. I was scared. But I never stopped loving you." That afternoon the first reporter showed up at my building. We escaped out the back, driving upstate to the same cabin where we had once hidden our relationship. The drive was filled with flashbacks, laughing over cheap wine, planning impossible futures, making promises we both broke. At the cabin, surrounded by the quiet woods, Presley finally broke down completely. The secret wasn't just us, she confessed. My father knew about my uncle's affair with his male assistant years ago. He covered it up, paid him off, and swore the family would never have another embarrassment. When he found our tech's senior year, he said history wouldn't repeat itself. I chose silence to protect you from that machine. But silence almost killed me. The revelation landed like another bomb. All these years I had assumed it was simple homophobia. It was deeper. A family legacy of buried truths and ruthless image control. We talked until the sun set, voices raw, hands eventually finding each other again. But peace was fragile. As night fell, headlights appeared on the gravel drive, her father's car. The confrontation that followed was brutal. Voices rising in the living room where we had once danced to old records. Mr. Harrington looked at me with pure contempt. You destroyed everything she was meant to be. Presley stepped between us. No, Dad. I destroyed myself by letting you decide who I was allowed to love. He left with a warning. Come home and fix this or lose everything. The door slammed, leaving us shaken but strangely united. The weeks that followed blurred into a relentless gauntlet of judgment and inner turmoil. Back in the city, my law firm placed me on administrative leave to avoid conflicts of interest. Code for the partners didn't want the scandal touching their reputation. Colleagues I had considered friends avoided my eyes in the elevator. At the grocery store near my apartment, whispers followed me like shadows. That's the one from the video, someone muttered. Presley faced worse. Her board voted to suspend her as CEO pending an ethics review. Paparazzi camped outside her building. Her mother called daily, alternating between tears and threats to disown her. The pressure was suffocating, and I watched Presley's guilt grow heavier with every headline. One night she showed up at my door soaked from rain, eyes hollow. I keep thinking about the people who will lose their jobs because of me, she said, voice breaking. The secretaries, the warehouse workers, all because I couldn't keep pretending. I pulled her inside, wrapped her in a towel, and for the first time in years we sat together without walls. I reminded her of the girl I fell in love with, the one who volunteered at the campus LGBT center in secret, who dreamed of starting a foundation for queer youth. That girl is still here, I told her. But you have to fight for her now. We spent hours revisiting the past in layers. The night she had cried in my arms after her father's first ultimatum. The morning I had seen her on campus with a male date she later admitted was arranged. Each memory peeled back another layer of pain we had both carried alone. The moral conflict peaked when Ethan Caldwell reached out. He asked to meet, not for revenge but for closure. We sat in a quiet coffee shop, and he surprised me with kindness. I knew something was off, he said. I just didn't know it was this. Take care of her, Reagan. She deserves to be happy. His grace only deepened Presley's guilt. How many people did I hurt by staying in the closet? She asked me later. The question haunted us both. Community backlash intensified. Conservative churches in her family's circle held prayer vigils for her soul, while online trolls sent death threats. My own extended family stopped inviting me to holidays. The isolation was crushing, yet in the quiet moments between storms, something new grew between us. Not the reckless passion of college, but a deeper battle-tested tenderness. We started small. Walks in hidden parks, late-night talks about therapy, joint sessions with a counselor who specialized in religious trauma and coming out. Presley began quietly restructuring the company, pushing for ethical reforms that honored the workers her father had ignored. Each step felt like atonement. But the past wasn't done with us. One evening, a private investigator her father had hired showed up with old photos from college. Proof of our relationship he threatened to leak unless Presley returned to the family narrative. The blackmail was the final straw. Standing together in my kitchen, we decided enough was enough. No more secrets, Presley said, squeezing my hand. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The boardroom battle that followed was the turning point none of us saw coming. Presley called an emergency meeting, me by her side as moral support. She walked in without the armor of designer suits, wearing simple jeans and the same Columbia hoodie from our first date. "I've spent my life trying to be the daughter my father wanted," she told the stunned directors. "Today I choose to be the woman I actually am." She laid out a new vision: diversify the board, invest in LGBTQ+ initiatives, protect every employee regardless of who they loved. Some members walked out. Others stayed, moved by her courage. Her father, watching via video link, disconnected without a word. The silence after was deafening, but for the first time Presley stood taller. That victory came with fresh wounds. My mother finally agreed to meet us for dinner, a tense hour where she struggled to reconcile the daughter she raised with the woman she saw now. "I just wanted you safe," she said, tears in her eyes. "The world is cruel." I hugged her, whispering that hiding had been crueler. Presley's mother reached out next. A quiet lunch where she admitted her own regrets about never challenging her husband. Small cracks of understanding appeared, fragile but real. Yet the community judgment didn't vanish overnight. Protests formed outside Harrington Tower, some supportive, some vicious. We received letters from young people across the country saying Presley's stand gave them hope. Those letters became our fuel. Internally, Presley's guilt still raged. Nights were hardest. She would wake from nightmares of the gala, of the ring hitting the floor, of every life she thought she had ruined. I held her through them, reminding her that redemption wasn't a single moment but 1,000 small choices. We traveled back to Columbia for a quiet weekend, walking the paths where our story began. There, under the same trees, she dropped to one knee, not with a diamond, but with a simple silver band we had bought together. "I wasted too many years running," she said. "Marry me, Reagan. Not to save anything but because you're the only home I've ever truly known." I said yes through tears, the circle finally closing. But the path wasn't smooth. A final family ultimatum arrived. Sign over voting rights or be erased from the will. Presley refused. The legal fight began, my firm ironically representing her in the dispute. Late nights in conference rooms, strategy sessions that bled into emotional confessions. The work healed us as much as it exhausted us. Through it all, the love we had denied grew stronger, layered with understanding and hard-won trust. The past no longer controlled us. We were rewriting it every day. Months later, the dust began to settle in ways we never dared hope for. The company stabilized under new leadership. Presley retained a seat on the board but stepped back from day-to-day control, focusing instead on the foundation she had always dreamed of creating. The Harrington Pride Fund now supported LGBTQ+ youth in business and law, turning her greatest pain into purpose. My own career flourished once the firm saw the positive publicity. Ethics cases poured in from clients who admired our story. Families softened slowly. My mother sent a wedding gift, a simple quilt stitched with our initials. Presley's mother attended our small civil ceremony in the same upstate cabin, tears in her eyes as she hugged us both. The wedding was intimate, just close friends and the people who had stood by us through the fire. No paparazzi, no grand ballroom, only candlelight, laughter, and the quiet promise we made in front of the people who mattered. As we danced under string lights, Presley whispered, "I used to think choosing you would destroy everything. Instead it saved me." In that moment, every layer of time, the college kisses, the painful goodbye, the gala explosion, the long nights of guilt, wove together into something whole. The journey had been brutal, filled with moral reckonings and community storms, but it had led us here. Yet even in happiness, reflections lingered. We still faced occasional judgment, quiet stares at restaurants, the occasional hate mail. But we faced it together, stronger for every scar. The woman who had once denied love to protect an empire now used that same strength to build something better. And I, the woman who had waited through years of silence, finally understood that true redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about carrying it forward with grace. True or false? No matter how much time passes or how deep the family pressure, denying your authentic self will always cause more lasting damage than the courage it takes to finally choose love.